Wild Soul HOPECast, Episode 2. H. Harness. Unconditional love is not self-abandonment. Hi, lovelies. Welcome back to Wild Soul HOPECast. I'm Sharon Lee, and this is a space where we bring clarity to chaos through hope, harness optimal positive energy, and through a deeper understanding of unconditional love. If this is your first time here, I'm really glad you found your way in. And if you're returning, thank you for trusting this space again. That matters more than you know. Before we begin, let's arrive together and take a breath with me. Not a deep performative breath, just a real one. Inhale. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. Let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw unclench. Let your body know you don't have to hold anything up right now. You don't need to prove insight. You don't need to be strong. You don't need to make meaning yet. This is a space where presence matters more than performance, where love doesn't require effort, where you're allowed to be exactly as you are, and know that we're here together. Let's contemplate a conversation about unconditional love. Today we're talking about unconditional love, and I want to start with something simple but very clear, because misunderstanding this costs people their energy, their peace, and sometimes their sense of self. Unconditional love is not self-abandonment. You got that, right? Unconditional love is not self-abandonment. Somewhere along the way, unconditional love became confused with unlimited tolerance, with endurance, with silence, with staying even when the body was screaming to leave. Many of us were taught, directly or even indirectly, that loving deeply meant tolerating harm, over-explaining themselves, shrinking our needs, absorbing emotional weight that was never ours, giving more, even when we're empty. We were taught that endurance equaled devotion, but endurance is not love. Endurance is survival. And if this topic already stirs something in you, tightness, sadness, recognition, I want you to know that you're not wrong for that. Before we go any further, let's do a body tension check. Because conversations about unconditional love often stay intellectual. They stay poetic. They stay abstract. But your body already has an opinion about this. Somewhere in your chest, your stomach, your shoulders, your nervous system already knows whether love has felt safe or costly. And that's why this conversation matters. Not because we need a better definition of love, but because many of us learned how to love from a nervous system that never felt protected. As I write in the Hope Method, we don't repeat relationship patterns because we're broken. We repeat them because the nervous system seeks familiarity before it seeks safety. Your body learned love before your mind ever had a language for it. Most people who struggle with unconditional love didn't learn it in adulthood. They learned it early. They learned it in families where love was inconsistent, where approval came with conditions, where safety depended on being agreeable, quiet, helpful, or emotionally convenient. Some love became something we earned. Maybe you learned things like, if I'm easier, I'll be loved. If I don't have needs, I won't be a burden. If I keep the peace, I'll stay safe. If I take care of everyone else, I won't be abandoned. No one may have said those words out loud, but your nervous system heard them anyways. Yeah, and this didn't only happen in families. It happened culturally, especially for women, especially for caregivers, especially for sensitive, empathic, intuitive people. We were praised for being understanding, rewarded for being low maintenance, loved most when we made ourselves easy to hold. So unconditional love slowly became coded as, don't ask for too much, don't disrupt the system, don't make your pain inconvenient. As I wrote in When the Soul Remembers Hope, many of us weren't taught how to receive love, only how to survive it. And when survival becomes the template for love, the body never rests. So when we grow up and hear the phrase unconditional love, our bodies often translate it as, don't leave, don't disappoint, don't choose yourself. But that isn't love. No, that's fear wearing devotion's clothes. This is where trauma enters the conversation. Not as a diagnosis, not as an identity, but as context. Trauma explains why love learned to hurt. And before we go further, I want to offer choice. If at any point something feels like too much, you're allowed to pause. You're allowed to come back later. You're allowed to listen in pieces. Nothing here requires pushing. If it feels supportive, place one hand somewhere grounding, your chest, your belly, your legs. Let your body know you're safe right now. When people hear the word trauma, they often think of something big, like one moment, one event, one obvious wound. But trauma isn't defined by the event. As it's understood across trauma psychology and somatic research, trauma is defined by the absence of safety and support at the time something overwhelming occurred. As I write in the Hope Method, trauma is not defined by what happened to you. It's defined by what your body had to carry alone. Your nervous system doesn't measure trauma by severity. It measures it by safety. And when safety is missing, even quietly, the body adapts. You may hear clinicians and researchers refer to big T and little t trauma. This language didn't originate with me. It comes from decades of trauma research, clinical psychology, and somatic healing work. A quick search on the internet will give you a plethora of resources and experts, but my takeaway is this. Big T trauma refers to experiences where safety was clearly threatened. Things like abuse, neglect, violence, medical trauma, abrupt sudden loss, while little t trauma refers to the quieter, cumulative experiences that taught the body how to survive. Things like being emotionally unseen, growing up too fast, learning that love disappeared when you had needs, feeling responsible for other people's emotions, being humiliated for not following societal norms, being perceived as too emotional or too shy or given a distinct label that became your identity, living in environments where tension, unpredictability, or silence felt completely unsafe. Little t trauma isn't smaller, it's subtler, and might even seem benign. As I write, little t trauma is what happens when nothing dramatic occurs, but something essential is missing. And it's followed up with being unseen, unheard, or emotionally abandoned teaches the body the same survival lessons as overt harm. Trauma isn't measured by how dramatic it looks. It's measured by how alone you felt while it was happening. If something resonates here, hear this clearly from me. You don't need to rank your pain. You don't need to justify your story. You don't need permission to acknowledge what shaped you. Just notice what your body feels like when it's named with compassion instead of dismissal. Here's where people get stuck. Because trauma isn't just memory. As I write in my book, the body remembers what the mind was never allowed to name. So if you've ever said, I don't know why I react this way, I should be over this by now, other people had it worse, please hear this from me. What we call coping was once protection. Your body did exactly what it needed to do to survive the environment it was in. I invite you to take a breath here. The body does remember. And if you need to take a few clearing breaths, get a sip of water, and let's continue our conversation. If shame shows up, you didn't do anything wrong. Shame often arises when compassion is unfamiliar. You don't have to forgive anything today. You don't have to make any meaning. Noticing is enough. This is where hope enters. Not as optimism, not as positivity, but as a pathway back to safety. Hope stands for harness optimal positive energy. And the first step, harness, is about stopping self-abandonment, not fixing yourself, not overriding your body, but learning how to stay. Because this is where the H in hope begins. Harness is not about fixing yourself. It's not about becoming more regulated, more spiritual, more healed, or more impressive. As I write in the Hope Method, harnessing is not about fixing yourself. It's about gathering what fragmented so you can feel whole again. Most of us learn to cope with leaving ourselves. We left our bodies. We left our needs. We left our truth. Not because we were weak. Not because staying would have been unsafe. Harness is the moment we stop leaving. Not dramatically, not perfectly, not intentionally. It is the practice of staying with yourself when discomfort, fear, or old survival patterns activate. And for many people, this is unfamiliar territory. Because if you learned that love required self-abandonment, then staying with yourself can feel selfish, dangerous, or even wrong. So let's take a moment and distinctly define this together. Harness does not mean pushing through discomfort. It does not mean forcing clarity. It does not mean regulating yourself for other people's comfort. Harness means orienting toward internal safety first. It is the shift from what do they need from me right now to what is my body asking for in this moment. Let me repeat that because it's important. We will now ask ourselves, what is my body asking for in this moment? And that can feel revolutionary. Harness often begins before words. It might show up as a breath or a pause before you agree to anything. A tightening in your chest that you finally listen to. A sense of something feels off that you no longer override. Harness is when you notice the signal And don't explain it away. It's when you stop saying, I'm probably overreacting, and start saying something in me needs attention. This is subtle work. And because it's subtle, people often dismiss it. But this is where healing actually happens. And you begin to react with your gut feelings and your intuition. This is important. Truly. Harness is not control. It's not about managing your reactions so you appear calm, healed, or evolved. It's about choice. Choice only exists when the nervous system feels safe enough to pause. And for many trauma-conditioned systems, pausing wasn't allowed. So at first, harness might feel like discomfort without immediate relief. That doesn't mean it isn't working. It means your body is learning something new. As I often say, you don't heal by being better at enduring. You heal by being better at noticing. Let's make this tangible. Harness might look like not replying to a message right away because your chest tightens when you read it. Saying, I need time to think about this, instead of forcing an answer. Leaving a room when your body feels overwhelmed, even if no one understands why. Choosing rest over explanation. Canceling plans without over-justifying yourself. Harnessing is when you honor the signal before you explain the story. And this is where self-abandonment begins to unwind. Yes, because self-abandonment isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just ignoring yourself one small moment at a time. This is where boundaries become embodied, not performative. Boundaries that come from the mind alone often feel rigid or guilt-ridden. Boundaries that come from harnessing feel clear, not aggressive, not defensive, just true. You don't set a boundary to punish someone. You set it to protect connection with yourself. And here's something important. Harnessing does not guarantee that others will like your boundaries. No. It guarantees that you won't disappear to maintain approval. And that can feel destabilizing at first because many of us were rewarded for being easy to override. Harnessing changes the pattern. I want to name this clearly. Harness can feel uncomfortable because it interrupts familiar survival strategies. If you were conditioned to over-explain, over-give, soothe things over, anticipate other people's needs, then choosing yourself may initially feel like danger. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means your nervous system is recalibrating. As I write in my book, discomfort during healing is often the body realizing it no longer has to disappear to stay safe. Harnessing is not the absence of discomfort. It's the presence of self-trust. And this is where unconditional love becomes real, not poetic, not theoretical. Unconditional love means I will not abandon myself to be loved. It means I stay with me even when others don't like it. This doesn't make you unkind. It makes you whole. And from wholeness, love becomes honest. You stop loving to survive, and you start loving to connect, improving your communication. If you're able, let's pause for a moment. Place one hand on your body, anywhere that feels grounding, your chest, your stomach, your leg, the couch cushion next to you. Ask yourself quietly, what does my body need right now to feel a little safer? Don't force an answer. Just notice. That noticing is harnessing. So many people come to healing angry at themselves, asking questions like, why do I overgive? Why do I shut down? Why do I freeze? But survival patterns are not flaws. I write in my books about survival patterns are not flaws. They are love letters by the nervous system. Healing doesn't begin with self-correction. It begins with self-safety. You don't heal by becoming harder. You heal by becoming safer. And unconditional love is only unconditional when it's optimal. Optimal love does not ask you to disappear. Optimal love does not require suffering to prove sincerity. Here's the reframe. Unconditional love means loving without conditions on worth, not without conditions on behavior. You can love someone deeply and still say, this doesn't work for me. I need space. I don't accept this treatment. I'm choosing myself here. Love doesn't vanish when you set a boundary. What vanishes is illusion. Divine love does not feel chaotic. It feels like emotional whiplash. It does not require constant proving. Divine love feels recognizing, grounded, safe. Safety doesn't mean passionless. It means your system can rest. If a connection keeps you dysregulated, depleted, or doubting your worth, that's not destiny. That's a trauma bond asking to be healed. Awareness isn't condemnation, it's liberation. Let's pause. You don't need to answer these today, just hold them gently. Where have I confused endurance with love? What does my body feel like when I'm loving someone? Have I stayed out of fear instead of alignment? What would love look like if it didn't cost me myself? And maybe the most important one, what if loving myself doesn't mean loving others less, but loving more honestly? Clarity doesn't come from forcing answers. It comes from the body feeling held. If this stirred something tender, be gentle with yourself tonight. You're not weak for needing love. You're not wrong for wanting connection. You're learning how to love without disappearing. And that is sacred work. Do one small thing for yourself today. Drink water, step outside, rest, write a sentence or two in your journal. Harnessing continues after the episode ends. You're not behind. You're right on time. Until next time, remember, love that requires self-abandonment isn't unconditional. It's unfinished. And hope teaches us how to finish the story with ourselves still intact. Next time, we'll explore the O in hope, optimal, and how choosing what's truly aligned begins in the body, not the story. Especially in relationships versus what feels familiar. Optimal is about retaining discernment so your choices come from safety, not conditioning. Because love that is meant for you will not require you to override your body to keep it. Until next time, remember, sometimes all we have left is hope, and sometimes hope is enough. Talk soon.